We are ready to start our next panel. It's going to be a discussion with aims to cover all the learning pointers we have had over the past 2 days. The panel, it's called What Does the Future Hold for Higher Education in the Americas? And we're going to have an amazing moderator, is Mr. Antonio Alonso. He's the president of the Spanish Association of Business Schools and Postgraduate Centers, of which he has been one of the founding partners. He's also the vice president of the European Federation of Private Higher Education. El próximo panel va a estar centrándose en el futuro de la educación superior en las Américas. Les recordamos que tenemos dispositivos de traducción disponibles para usted.
We remind you they have interpretation devices if you need English or Spanish interpretation, and we have our assistants in sign language interpretation for those who join us through streaming. So for our panelists, we have decided this panel to be in Spanish. So if you need assistance for interpretation devices, it's a good moment to get it. With this, we will now welcome, with a big round of applause, Mr. Antonio Alonso. First of all, it's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you and have this opportunity to see what are the main points that we need to take on board for the future of higher education in Latin America, and I would say for the future of higher education in Spanish. With me, we will be joined by a very interesting panel of speakers. Firstly, I would like to call Professor Adriana Martinez Angarita. She's founder of Senegalaf. Fine, well, and you? Secondly, Dr. Claudio Rama, academic director of University, the Business University, and following Dr. Agueda Benito, academic chief, academic director of Santana Education Group, and finally, Dr. Isidro Fierro, who's the dean of the International Studies School of University. I can't hear the name. Okay, Espírito Santos, that's right. So let's begin. Firstly, if you wish, with what we have seen, where are the challenges and opportunities of evolution for higher education within Latin America? What is the importance of internationalizing higher education when projecting the future of our institutions? Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Indeed, I think internalization, since we're talking about globalization, post-pandemic, has a very important impact. I think the context in creating globalized students is definitely born of internationalization, like cooperation. I think it's a very important point to understand the similarities and really how these spaces can generate value. Not internalization just to do it because, but how does it really add value? How can I generate these opportunities for students to have a different view of their environment? And of course, creating a relevant impact today with the migratory topics that we're seeing specifically in Latin America, where migration is not just something that eventually passes, but we have a very important mobility in the entire region in such a way that for a student that moves to a different country can have a space for labor, because there's an acknowledgement, a knowledge of the context, and a program and certain competencies that can help their work. And without a doubt, there needs to be an additional conversation between the spaces of state accreditation. I think there's a great opportunity that as a region we have not taking strong steps, but it is very important to be able to have the conversation in our states, in our countries, the agencies that are responsible for accreditation. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. It's a pleasure being here. I say, first of all, it's a diagnostic that internationalization for Latin America compared with the regions of the world is a minority. It's not even 1%. And it's marginal to all other higher education systems. This is a product of a stage that have the corresponding structures, the language issues in Latin America, managing the language, a dominantly profile of on-site and a cost structure. And at the end, it's an issue where quality does not have the levels of value and recognition that can promote the process of internationalization. The internationalization is the response to the symmetry of quality. It's a volume of quality symmetry, the lack of equal offer, a low level of quality, and it's represented in this stage of asymmetry, and rankings clearly show this in the global stage. Therefore, the problem for me is a standard of criteria of ensuring quality, that the region has a specificity that lacks of regional certification systems in the entire world. Aside from your academic degree, has a professional certification that that means a higher quality in Latin America. The college degree is your immediate access point to a labor pool, and that to me is a weakness. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Antonio, for having us here. I think above the internationalization is the concept of cooperation. At the end of the day, is the fundamental part of internationality is to build bridges, to work together, to close gaps, to enrich ourselves mutually. So for me, the concept of collaboration is a concept that clearly what we're seeing that provides greater strengths in the academic environments, and I think it's part of the future of Latin America and what it will bring us. Internationalization is a wide concept. Internationalization of the institution through internationalizing the curriculum of the faculty, of students, of the interactions, and the role of technology as well is something essential within internationalization. We're not just international when we travel to places. Now we have people connected to this event, following these sessions online from many other countries, and technology is allowing this. So I think technology, well, we've talked a lot on how has changed after the pandemic. It has also opened opportunities that are a lot more clear for internationalization. Students, a short while ago, we developed a study asking students what they wanted from the experience to keep in future. And they said that, of course, more flexibility when going to class and that type of thing, but they wanted to continue that connection with other students, with other professors from other places in the world, representatives of industry. They wanted to, from their classes, those windows open through technology to the world. I think right now we can no longer talk about internationalization without speaking of technology as well, at least to to throw there some concepts. Dr. Fierro. Good afternoon, everyone. Before all, I would like to thank UNICARIBE as host of this great event. They have really gone above and beyond. Thank you for all the attention to all their visitors. Just to greet all the virtual, the international topic in universities is similar to the countries. Countries that are not open to the world, unfortunately, have a disadvantage in the competitive side to the global stage. In universities, specifically the US, Guayaquil, Ecuador, we have an international process that is very serious formal and very logical in the aspect where we consider in the previous panel, they asked what is the most important competency for the future, and definitely the intercultural competencies, meaning how do you behave in another culture in an efficient manner, is the soft skill that is most important that global leaders can have through a process of internationalization that is taken seriously, as our colleague said, is not just traveling, is to commit and to know how to negotiate with people from other countries. The international topic is important because it's not only opening your mind, your international curriculum about managing and be able to use several languages, how to behave, and how to take advantage from our students. And opening to the world gives us a competitive advantage. The linguistic capacities, the intercultural competencies, and being able to face the 21st century challenges. I'm hugely delighted to talk about this topic. I think Dr. Rama has said something very important, which is try to establishing homogeneous systems of equivalencies and recognition. And I think in that picture, I think from the Spanish Association of Business Schools and from the agency for qualifying the quality of universities, we've created a certification for professional master's programs, not academic in this, but it's a good jumping off point in Spanish, because what we see is there are a lot of certifications that we can join internationally, but they're all in English. And I think we need to defend our language and the way we look at the world. Doctor, how do you see it? Completely agree. I think there are several initiatives in Latin America that go along those lines of establishing a framework of technical qualifications, usually in some countries hand in hand of multilaterals like CAF. Is an important opportunity. I think that we need to rethink ourselves as institutions on the value that we give this, because I do believe there are initiatives, but not necessarily universities are taking it or leveraging them. I think it's interesting, the process. I think it's necessary and is going to allow us to really offer to our students those spaces for mobility and internationalization that we're discussing. From Seneca Lab, we have in Panama an annual event where we're permanently speaking with different actors and parties that are interested in internationalization. We're talking about the production, accrediting agencies and rankings. And something that we find in July, which was our edition in July, we wanted to start to speak with accreditation agencies, because there, the state agencies in Costa Rica, Colombia, and Panama, with the opening of starting with Ecuador, which Dr. Simena Cordova is around here, to start to really detail those differences that are not transcendental. But for us, in the complexity we have as an institution, we are, how do we call it? We are giving it a complexity that is unnecessary. I think it's important to simplify it. It's a beautiful word that is in Spanish, lightness. That lightness is an interesting concept for education institution. And as we see each other more similar when it comes to competencies and achievements, we can achieve those standardized frameworks so we can go on that stage of general standardization. I think we're more similar than we are different, but that is part of understanding each other as being a great opportunity. We just had one old stage in internationalization on student and faculty mobility, and that has been the dominant stage. With the last 25 years, we have moved forward towards the mobility of institutions, the mobility, the cross borders, and new stages corresponding to internationalization of accreditation, learning resources, of certifications. So internationalization, as she said, there is a group of criteria that have been modified. We just had one profile in our political standards of acceptance and validation of traditional mobility. So when we start thinking on cross-border mobility, it's a low level of push to everything that we are seeing on mirror schools and virtual and mobility. And the stage of institutional mobility has some huge obstacles, and we don't have the presence of international institutions that other regions have. Also, the internationalization stage has huge asymmetries. There are institutions or programs or offers that come from other countries, and we have very low internationalization of graduates when it comes to a presence. I am the chancellor of a university in Colombia. We have an office and a unit in Spain for the process of internationalization in Spain, and years ago in Miami. And the process for that is hugely complex. So that is the asymmetry of internationalization on important topics. So finally, two important points that for me are significant in our model for higher education is focused in 95% in students for bachelor's. And then the mobility is for postgrad, and the lack of coverage and the lack of encouraging higher quality. And for PhDs, it doesn't go beyond 0.58% of the students, so our level of mobility is very low. Finally, the absence of a political system that has promoted the process of internationalization internally or regionalizing standardization, because Europe, ever since 2000, has the entire Bologna process, and we started a discussion that doesn't get anywhere, has never gone anywhere, about starting standards, protocols, focused by competencies, or that wonderful policy of what was the 2020, so therefore year 20% of students are able to do 20% of their courses foreignly, like the Bologna. I think the key word here, one of the conversations here, is alliances. We don't need to don't need to go through the history of copper to get to the cell phone. Latin America can really take great leaps, even though there are things that haven't worked like they've worked in other places in the world. I am convinced of the value of alliances between universities, between agencies, between student associations, of working together to find solutions together, and solutions to big problems. We're talking about sustainability, and this is unstoppable. This is something that has come to stay. This cannot be resolved from isolation of the universities. No, not individually, each one of us. We need to work together. And I think internationalization is coming hand in hand with collaboration and alliances to Latin America. I mean, soon, but it's already here. In every forum is seeing the tendencies that are detected, the interest that experts of different countries are showing. And I think there is a great opportunity in creating alliances that are efficient, that can bring more quality education to the entire Latin American population, and that can help us in the development of those sustainable development goals. So taking again the topic of alliances, as you mentioned, and accreditation and international mobility, we have the foundational values of our university, which is freedom, the issue of mobility, the easy mobility that a student and a professor can have to be able to transform and try to replicate their knowledge in other countries. The international topic needs to be clear, and the mobility that Europe has that is lacking in Latin America needs to be that marriage between the university, the country per se, and the business side. For those validations are recognized, because Ecuador and other countries, we're so focused in other problems that we have, security, etc. And it's the role of the university through alliances with the private institutions to be able to resolve the problems we have in the issue of COVID. When we went through that situation, we had the issue of alliances. To be able to push forward, we created an important program of vaccination, the UVS clinics, to try to combat these issues, looking for alliances, not only to achieve student mobility, not only professors, but also go across borders and have an important impact in our society. Well, what other aspects do you consider will be able to help the future of higher education in Latin America? Well, I think we're in a very interesting stage that allows us as education institutions to sit down and think on different topics. My line is what will be those. I was a dean on two universities in Panama. I've been working very closely with the productive sector when we just don't work on the employability, but the competitiveness level of the country. They seem similar, but it's different. And now with the National Council of Accreditation in Panama, where we have the universities. So I think really when we started to look into these different contexts because they're part of an equal ecosystem. However, they have valid points in claiming on the result of higher education. When we really able to understand these concepts, we understand the training and the result that is expected of them. I think this allows us to go from programs even designed in a different manner, leveraging, as we said, the cross-cutting capacities in the region. There's an important role for universities. 80, 100 years ago, universities were respected and set the tone to where society was going. And that's how it started. Why? Because obviously they were the providers of information. Today, that role is no longer there. Information is already there, but how to think on the information is an important point where universities right now can remind them of that value in society. We're in front of a radical change in our society when it comes to artificial intelligence. And it's a change that we don't know if we're so aware on what in the next few years this will mean for society, not just for work or for technology per se. Our society will start to behave differently. It's going to be facing different challenges to which we've never faced. To analyze these changes and maintain the order, to put it that like that, I don't mean regulation, but the order of our society is an important point that no one is taking charge of. And I think that is where university will have a predominant role in that line of thought and analyzing of what that change will mean for our society. I also believe that a very important point for universities will be the flexibility. We're not known for this, and we need to accept it. We are not flexible. We always talked about flexibility, but it's so hard for us. That will be a very important point, and I'll add a cherry on that little cake we'll have to eat, and that is that aside from flexible, we need to do it quickly. Where we are also not the best in our history, we're not the best. We need to be flexible and we need to be fast. Those two values will define the future of our universities. I do not want to go without mentioning the rules of the game. And the rules of the games mean regulation. Yes, and yes, our regulations in Latin America need to change. They have been designed traditionally to control. That is the principle where regulations have been designed in all of our countries, save one or two exceptions that I envy deeply. But in general, it's been to control. Today, it needs to be to innovate. And that change is deep, and our governments and our regulators don't know how to do it. We need to be part of that change, lead it from universities, and with the empathy of understanding our regulators, to be able to achieve the changes in regulations that we all know limit us to be able to establish topics of innovation in our countries. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning in the room next door, I am going to introduce a book. The University UNICARIBE invited you on digital disruption, University 4.0, and artificial intelligence. So I don't want to go too much. I invite you tomorrow, indeed, for this stage about a book that is a research on the last 3, 4, 5 years, saw a little pill, uh, the red pill or the blue pill for Matrix to be able to look at that topic very quickly. We are in a cycle, given the of successive cycles in the human, the the cycle and mechanization. The decade of 70, we started a new cycle of revolutions that are the digital revolution. This digital revolution that was the computer revolution ended. And now we're beginning on the revolution of artificial intelligence. It's a transformation, meaning that goes across all sectors. And right now, it's like we're sitting in 1970 looking at what Jobs and the people from and Bill Gates, what the next cycle is going to. This cycle from 1970 to here changed our society, changed the productive structures, destroyed enterprises, created new ones, and changed the old world of the book and radio, television, and created something completely different and reintegrated and superior. The stage of that revolution started to be developed through wireless 1G, 2G, 4G, now 5G, going to a scenario of LMS, and then a scenario of internet with bandwidth that is sufficient, has been changing, the big data. And there's another engineering when it comes to the relationship of capitalism based on platforms or a global structure based in platforms. The transformation of artificial intelligence, what it's adding is a scenario of a different logistic for programming. Obviously, it's not the simple programming, but it adds different interactions with the databases or sensors or people in chats, and it's transforming all structures. Our future cannot be thought of within cycles, all perspective theories that look at a scenario without breaks or without change. Also, we need to think in the future of the scenario of these cycles and the chaos theory. That means the process that from the outside, like wars, pandemics, earthquakes, or COVID-19, accelerates this process. Here, the artificial intelligence got here too fast, that was already produced, and we knew it when we saw Netflix was following us or Google was following us. And this is a present scenario. So we need, not in the future, not in a fantasy utopic scenario or general, but within the cycle. And this is the cycle of a continuity of the digital cycle, like several cycles of industrial revolution came in. Now this is a digital cycle, but a digital cycle goes into its second stage, is the cycle of artificial intelligence. How will this transform the labor markets, how they'll change the distribution of labor between man and machine, how will it reconfigure the distribution of labor in the world, how will it reconfigure the pay structures and the competencies profiles for the people in the labor market is what we now are assuming, and different reports are seeing in iceberg scenario, because we're just barely looking at the tip of it. So what I clearly believe is we need to think in the future today, is to think about the scenario of technology, is to think obviously on the political stage, which is prospective, is to think undoubtedly on the scenario of reconfiguration of an economy, of our society, and how our societies will be going again into this scenario in our skills and capacities. There's no profession that is not going to disappear and change, meaning in design, if you're not reviewing all of your programs in universities and reviewing signature by how will your teaching aspect will be changed, the profile of graduates and the tasks required in the labor market. So when you think on the big picture today, the group of pictures taken from LED and mid project are already greater than all the pictures taken before in the analogic systems in Kodak or ADFAC. you realize the dimension. Pictures are disappearing, so programs, at least design programs, are changing. And there's no discipline or professional career or teaching process that will not be affected. Our task today, that is a hugely complex task, is to think on the future, to think on the future in the cycle, in research, and the future without being afraid in the future as a continuous and permanent stage, because cycles that are invented or created by Kondratiev since 1200. Since 1200, we have permanent cycles of renewal that are the result of our own fault, meaning of the knowledge of the university world that is what's going to set our future stage.
I would like to talk about professors, about what I believe that is required for a successful future, and it's more professional support. In the end, we've had a lot of sessions throughout these 2 days, and if we notice the sessions of rankings, who receives those publications, who receives those citations, who has those PhDs, who contribute to that reputation, it's the professors, and they are the motor force of our universities. And being a professor today is way harder than it was 20 or 50 years ago. Back in those days, it was enough to know your discipline very well, but now the requirements are much more complex. In the educational environment, we professors are we deliver educational experiences, and it's not good enough to know a lot about mathematics, physics, or whatever. It's about being able to design those educational experiences that will lead to an effective learning from our students, that will attain that employability that we were talking about before. And in the end, the body of professors is there, and they need our support in everything. And support not only means training courses and development courses, which is very good, and they are very necessary, and there aren't enough in some places, but it also means flexibilizing the organizations and the structures, incorporating new profiles, designing instruction papers. How many of the universities that we have right now represented here already have effective teams of designers? No, they have their professors, they design the curriculum, and they play a key role. And I would like us not to forget about the professors and to rethink about what the needs of the professors are, so that we can make an effective contribution to what we believe that it is necessary for our universities to bring to Latin America in the future.
Que flexibilidad, adaptabilidad.
I consider that flexibility, adaptability, and autonomy is what the universities need to be able to stand out in the future. Professors, as you mentioned, they need to be trained, obviously, and they need to understand the new language spoken by students who have other technical capabilities and technological capabilities as well. There will go with flexibility and adaptability of universities, so that they can be more swift in executing programs that attract more interest in the environmental aspect, because the student has different characteristics than the students before. That is prioritizing environmental topics, for instance, and that kind of topics. And universities need to understand that this is the future, so that they can make their programs more attractive. Understanding that another thing we're lacking in universities is the issue that of having everyone committed with the international environment, and also the adaptations that a new student requires and that they press us to get. The ramifications, as Dr. Rama was saying, to look for each of the syllabus, each of the classes, and trying to figure out how they're going to be impacted with artificial intelligence, being open-minded, being flexible, and being able to adjust to all of the pressures that we're going to receive. For professors, training is essential, and it's vital, and this is what we're trying to do in our university, not only to try to train the new generations, but also the new professors that are going to be the ones that are going to be leading or guiding the leaders of the future. Well, I believe that we have a few more minutes so that you can so that the audience can ask any questions that they may have. I'm quite sure that some interesting questions may arise. Does anybody have a question they want to ask?
Muy bien.
Very well. I believe that we should dig a little bit deeper in what technology and AI is going to have an impact on in terms of the educational processes. In the beginning of this month, in the institution that I work for in Salamanca, I found on a startup what is called now EduTech, was focused on the use of artificial intelligence in the learning processes, and I was really impacted. I don't know if they're going to be able to do what I was told that they were able to do. I need to see a demonstration of it. That was that through the analysis of the learning process of the students to identify what is the best model, the learning model for each one of them, and in that way delivered the classes in the way that it turns out to be the most effective. So how do you see this topic of the implementation of robots for learning processes? Without question, technology is and is going to be the next roadmap for all of us. And I believe that there are no differences. I believe that we're all very clear on this. But I don't know if we are so conscious that it's going to go into the very core of institutions, and many of the results of the universities are going to depend or rely or vary according to the alliance we make with the technology. What does this mean? In the world today, where we, in our daily life, have the opportunity of being known and recognized on all the systems where we move around without asking for it. And this has to do with the trend analysis, artificial intelligence, and what I want and need. The student today expects that same treatment of what they are encountering outside on the street. When they are in Google, when they think that I want to eat pizza and you get 5 promotions for pizza, they expect the same thing in the university. Why? Because that's the real day-to-day life for them. That's their reality. They expect to be identified, recognized in the university, and they expect the university to know who they are and what do they want. This analytics of these data allows the university to start to understand their impact in that student. Why? Because up to today, we tend to see things about in groups. How is our performance? How are our graduates? So we think of people in groups instead of individually. So this is now a trigger along this line, and that's where technology, and there's a wide variety of technologies that are going into the market right now, where they don't only manage to identify these kind of trends in students in their learning process that allow us to have a better understanding of the impact of our professors and of our teaching tools, but also allows us to understand trends on how students want to learn. We've always said, how do you learn? Today, it's the student, the one who defines how they want to learn, and that change is happening through technology, and we're going to be able to understand it through technology and become much more efficient. It allows us to listen, to be present in individuality, and especially in coverage. Usually when we had active learning, we had it thanks to a professor or a group of professors, a pilot project. However, we never had it in the entire institution because we couldn't guarantee it. Today, technology allows me as an institution to guarantee the implementation of learning model throughout my entire organization. How? Through technology. The openness to this kind of spaces and allies becomes extremely important for the future of the operation of universities. 15 years ago, the Universidad del Caribe, UNICARIBE, shared a book that was called The Paradox of Tendencies, and it was a very wide study that was carried out on the 6 macro trends. That was regulations, massification, differentiation, internationalization, virtualization, and marketing. In the current scenario, I'm seeing how each of these 6 trends is moving. Regulations are moving towards a diversity of regulations. The axis is regulatory, diversity, on standards, protocols, criteria, within the framework of autonomy, but of multiple regulations that we're going to see. The massification led to universalization. You only need to have 100% of young men between 18 and 24 years old graduated, or undergoing their degree. Society cannot have the lower training scenario to be able to measure itself or to work in the new job markets. High school is no good anymore, and the university degree is now middle school, basically. It's not enough to get into the job markets. While we have 55% coverage in the rates of graduation or the grades, however, it's still a minimum. So it's universalization in the job market. The differentiation as a criterion ends up being the personalization or customization of education. That is, it's not possible to continue to have formats that are structured or ordained as if we're talking about classrooms from the 17th century, or within a context where we have freedom of students along their path, profiles of knowledge and competencies that are differentiated, etc. Customization is the axis, and that's going to bring me back to a minimum reference. Internationalization, it's the online education. Everything's going to be online and within a network. Now we have the segmentation at the institutional level, and then I want to focus on how virtualization is going to move on to the future stage, which is educational automation. We're going to have a small chat bot, a small robot that is going to be our advisor, our Alexa in terms of education, that is going to accompany us. There's a study that was carried out in 1928 by Rand Corporation, and said, what happened if all Americans had a phone? In regards to the labor market, the job market, because there were some women that worked managing the manual phone centrals. The study said that it wasn't possible because it would lead the 60% of women to this kind of job. But then we had mechanical, electromechanical, automatic, and digital phone centrals, and now that job does not exist. So how does this have an impact on the educational sector? The professors, and we're obviously going to see a bigger and stronger level of impact towards a more customized and digitalized education. There's a theory that was born in 1950, and in 1950 they tried to invent machines and tools that failed. The machine and tools did fail because it was a mechanical machine. Today, with the software systems, with the AI follow-up systems, with the aids that allow these systems, have been and will change. I would like to open a debate. It's not, our issue is not our professors, it's not our jobs. Our issue are our students, and our issue is not even students, but the cognitive externalities of training our nations and creating a structure where Latin America doesn't sell meat or animals or wood, that are all industrial elements that are worthless, but rather than doing that, creating knowledge. If we continue to think on our professors, that's good, that's the job, but we need to think on the creation of knowledge, of capacity, of possibilities, which is the scenario of what technology could allow for. And obviously, not only technology, but the set of elements that I can see as a trend. I'm going to talk about professors now, because they are not the end, but they are the instrument to achieve that end, that ultimate objective. And I agree with you, Claudio, which is our students, 100%. However, societies, beyond all of the educational processes, we're talking about generation of knowledge and the contribution of the process through scientific development, and that is done by the professors of our universities. In the beginning, I was quoting this study that has been done with thousands of students in 3 countries. In Latin America, we only have Costa Rica, but also Turkey and India. Thousands of students, hundreds of professors. and it speaks. It addresses the future of education. And one of the things that is stated there is that the students mentioned that one of the things they didn't want to lose was the cafeteria. They don't want to lose the cafeteria. They don't want to lose, because the cafeteria means a lot to us. That means that the cafeteria is the space for the development of human relationships. So when we talk about technology, we're talking about all the good things that technology is going to bring with AI, with the virtualization, with the professor, etc. But where is that human factor? Where is that? We're talking about the millennium and positive psychology. We had done a lot of studies about that impact that is so beneficial that this human connection has, that helps students to learn more. And that robot or that AI can't do that yet. I believe there's something that is going to change, but the students are still saying that they prefer to come to the practice laboratory. But today, maybe that's going to change, but today, even the most sophisticated systems of augmented reality, virtual reality, and the big laboratories for experimental sciences, the students still don't believe that those are up to the level of the experimental laboratories. But that's maybe something temporary, but they seem to want to continue to come to the cafeteria forever. Yes, talking about flexibility and the capacity of the university leaders to adjust to robotics and AI, universities who don't jump on that train are going to perish, unfortunately. So it's important to listen to the professor, listen to the student, and listen to the professors who are the ones who convey this knowledge. The student is the person that is going to feed us and that's going to lead the way and tell us where the universities are going to go. I'm talking about students at a global level, because our community is not only, it's not geographically limited anymore, but we become visible through rankings and through the virtual environment. So the student is the one that's going to say, hey, let's give an award to this university because they are flexible enough to adapt to change. So their curriculums are going to prepare me to be a competitive world-class leader. So flexibility, adaptability, all the while the government allows us to be autonomous as universities everywhere in the world. Why? Because who are the ones that are the most interested on having universities to remain over time? Institutions. And it's the students who are going to give us our awards, because they know that when they choose that university, they are making a bet on modernity. That is the university that's going to give them the greater employability and the best resources to be a better professional and face the future as global leaders and being good leaders for the future. Thank you very much. We have very little time. Do we have another question, please? Thank you very much. Actually, Isidro has referenced the topic of of autonomy in the universities and our authoritarian governments in Latin America. That is, to me, one of the worst threats that our higher education is facing in Latin America. And I believe that this is an important aspect that for the closure for this panel, this needs to be very clear. While we are thinking on academic excellence and how to improve the world rankings, there are universities that are confiscated. The clearest example is the one in Nicaragua, where the UCA was completely confiscated. Even the name was changed recently, answering to very clear interests. The regime of Ortega Murillo, to his regime, it's not convenient to train and to educate people because evidently that is going to be a weapon that is going to be used against him. So this is something that needs to be very clear, and it should be of the utmost concern, especially in the instances where we're reflecting on this regard, because it's not only in Nicaragua. We have similar situations in El Salvador. Unfortunately, in Costa Rica, we have a government that goes along that line too, and we have many other issues like this in Latin America.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. Manuel Mercedes, Chair, President of the Dominican Association on International Business Professionals and professor at University SWAS in Tech and APEC. You spoke about flexibility. Dr. Adriana, Maritza, and Dr. Claudio also stated that everything has changed. As a professor, I have a very big concern. We know that when COVID-19 hit, many Latin American countries and many regions within those countries did not have any experience in virtual education. We are, in these times today, students have the capability of choosing between in-person classes, virtual classes, whether synchronic or asynchronic. This is being done more for comfort than for quality. And I would like to leave that concern because in our country, sometimes we believe that virtual education means that I can take my classes while at work. And as professors, we can make that mistake sometimes. So I believe that this degree of flexibility and the modality or the mode of learning that you can choose in Latin American countries and in our country, that I know the case a little bit, this should be very well oriented. And it's a process that needs to be guided. I believe that a lot of students and professors are not responsible enough in order for that virtual education to grow properly. It's a reality. It's going to grow anyways, and it's something that nobody can control, such as globalization. So I would like to hear from you. What is your opinion? What is the level of awareness that we need to take in these countries and educational systems where by the time COVID hit, there was no experience on virtual education?
Hacemos todas las preguntas y luego intervenimos, yo creo que sí.
We're going to hear the questions and then we're going to intervene and state our opinions.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon. I wanted to ask you, how do universities face the lifelong learning format? I believe that the constant learning is something that the universities need to prepare for, and Dr. Claudio was saying something very interesting. I believe that many universities that are not prepared to face change, doing an analogy, may become in a BlackBerry, in a Kodak, and I believe that they will no longer be able to offer an educational offer that would be adapted to this learning process. As you were saying, a customized learning process where in the end we're going to take into consideration how each one wants to learn, what are the skills that someone has. Because, for instance, if I'm teaching a math class, there might be a person that can learn it more easily. It doesn't mean that they're smarter, but they have better skills and better aptitudes to face it. So I believe that there are a lot of challenges for universities. One, customized education, continuous education, and the hybrid aspect of these new modes. How are universities focusing on this, are approaching this, and if we are prepared for this? Is there fear? Like you were saying in the cafeteria, I believe that today, with the UVR and how technology companies are getting ready for this process, I believe we are facing a new conceptual process for learning. So I would like to understand how this is being viewed from the university standpoint, if there is fear in terms of facing this new reality of learning. Thank you very much. I believe I'm going to be answering 3 questions in common. The aspect of our governments, it has to be about raising awareness on our education. Our governments, unfortunately, in Latin America always come and go, and they have instances that we are not giving continuity to processes and things. So we need to continue to discuss about the supra instance, particularly in the private education, which is the one that is usually more impacted. And with the other 2 conversations about the changes that are coming, no question, the challenge that we get is evaluation assessment. How do we validate learning? We don't need to be afraid to hybrid teaching or technological spaces or virtuality. On the contrary, how can we validate that learning occurred and how can we demonstrate it? I believe that's going to be the challenge for all of us and the success that we're going to have on what we do. Regarding lifelong learning, I believe
Estamos en la línea.
I believe that we only have one conception on educational law or the educational right, and it is supported in the Declaration of Men and Citizens of the French law, and that has advanced. And today, the core topic is, for me, it's not only the right to teach, it's not only the right to learn, but the right to choose. I have the right to choose not what they want to give me as face-to-face education from 4 to 6 or in this career path or in this city or in this modality or in this pedagogy. I have the right to decide. I have the right to make my own decisions instead of having someone choosing over me, and I have a PhD in education. And we believe that we need to regulate the structure, this time, this thing, this learning experience, this and that, and that's a scope with a low level of flexibility. And we still believe that societies are courts ordained to make the sheep that we need to implement order on. So the right for students to decide what they want to study with a minimum standard, because it's not that institutions are going to do whatever. We need to establish a minimum standard. From that up, going up, there's the freedom. So states cannot be regulating everything, but you're not, for instance, a standard, you are not going to be able to sell rotten food. That's the minimum control. From there onwards, then freedom, flexibility, and the possibility for each person to decide how they want to organize their life, their possibilities, their career path, and their curriculums. I believe the main concept is between regulation as a philosophical conception and freedom as a philosophical conception in relation to the right to choose. And that is why today we're seeing that after the pandemic, all of the countries are starting to regulate things again, controlling virtual education. And we started the pandemic, I say it like this, in Uruguay, 0% virtual education. And now it went to 100, and now we're going back to the same thing. We have presented bills to modify the law. There is a paradigm that is mistaken regarding face-to-face classes, because in the end what we want is to evaluate real learning. We want to evaluate capacities built on real learning. We're not talking about standards, regulations, or anything. This is the important thing, the learning. Quite briefly regarding the question that you were asking about technology and the incorporation of technology all of a sudden during the pandemic. I believe that, as I agree fully with the concepts of autonomy and freedom as basic principles so that the learning process can develop, I believe that the technological structure is paramount as well. And in many cases, it defined the success or failure of those efforts made by the universities. In the end, whenever there was a technological infrastructure, universities and got caught up. Professors learned what they needed to learn, the students learned what they needed to learn, but if there was no technological infrastructure, then nothing was going to happen ever. And I believe that there's a new aspect here in terms of the priorities for countries. I believe the technological infrastructure is key. And in terms of the lifelong learning, I believe that universities alone cannot do this. I believe that this is going too fast right now, and it's impossible for the resources that universities have on their own are able to cater to those needs. I believe that, again, this has to do with collaboration and flexibility, with working in partnership with the industry, with working on much more open models and much more flexible models, because otherwise we're not going to be able to respond to all of this. Yes, regarding the virtualization, not many countries were adapted or prepared for it because of what Dr. Rama was saying, because of regulations. Now it's very common. This is dangerous. the excess of in control really removes flexibility, and this tied with continuous education. So the issue of being close to what the company wants, so that through education, continued education, we can prepare more swiftly to those who want to develop themselves in a specific academic subject. So listening what the company wants, so that through them we can improve our programs and improve the results we give to the future generations. Thank you very much. We're going to wrap things up here. I believe that we've exceeded our time available. I believe our conclusions are very clear. Flexibility, being swift, cooperation, and understanding that we are in a globalized environment. A student today can study anywhere. Whatever the governments do to try to prevent this from happening, because it's very easy for a student anywhere in the world can study anywhere else in the world. So thank you, everyone.